Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. I am excited to be with you today and discuss our topic, which is strength equipment for physical therapists. What sort of stuff should we have in our clinic? I'm going to give you some ideas of what we believe are the essential pieces here at ICE. So excited to chat about that. I am Dr. Zach Long, so I'll be your host today. Our podcast, before we get started on that, let's discuss upcoming courses inside of the fitness athlete division. So we've got a number of different courses coming up over the next 3 months. First, in Amarillo, in March, we're going to be in Amarillo, Texas. That's actually going to be this weekend, so starting tomorrow. Springfield, Missouri, 2 weekends from now, and North Platte, Nebraska. In April, we'll be hitting Seattle, and in May, in Boston and Rockville, Maryland. So check us out on the road if you want to get into some courses and learn how to implement some of the equipment that we will be talking about today with your patients. So let's jump into today's topic. What are the pieces of strength and conditioning equipment that we believe at ICE are essential for us to have in our clinics if we want to serve our patients the best? As you know, at ICE, we are all about being fitness forward, helping people improve their overall levels of fitness, not just focusing on getting rid of their pain. And so we need certain pieces of equipment if we're going to adopt that mindset. And so the first piece of equipment, I hate that we have to start here. Like it's shocking to me that in 2023, we still have to discuss why physical therapists need a barbell and bumper plates and a squat rack in their clinic, but it's still not in 95% of physical therapy clinics out there. So we could do an entire podcast talking about why the barbell is so important. Actually, Jeff just wrote a blog, ptonice.com. If you look at the menu bar, we now have blogs going up there. He just wrote a blog on why the barbell is the most important piece of equipment in a physical therapy clinic. So check out that blog. We could talk for an entire episode about the different reasons why we need it. If you look at the Lift More trials, if you look at stuff like Tagliafieri's motor control versus general strength and conditioning for low back pain study, you'll see that it's really hard to argue that we shouldn't be using heavy loaded barbell movements with our patients. It is so much better in improving strength, hypertrophy, endurance, reducing kinesiophobia, improving functional performance measures, improving bone mineral density. Like all of that stuff has been shown time and time again in the research. So it's hard to argue against that at this point. And I'm not going to focus on that as much as on the patient outcomes. I want to go dollars and cents here. Dollars and cents. If you want to treat the huge population and the hugely growing population of fitness athletes, Olympic lifters, power lifters, CrossFitters, you need to have this piece of equipment in your clinic. When they walk into your physical therapy clinic, when they see a squat rack, when they see a barbell, when they see that stuff that they love, they instantly set the expectation in their mind that this is the type of clinic that can deliver the services that they need. So for just a small investment in money, you can really open your clinic up to a brand new patient population. And you're not going to have near as good of luck getting those patients in the door if you don't have this equipment. So just from a pure business standpoint, you need to get this in your clinic to help out with that patient population. So that's number one. You have got to have a barbell, bumper plates, and squat racks. The rest of the podcast, I want to focus on where we go after that. That should be a given in physical therapy clinics at this point. Where do we go from there? The second pieces are going to be pretty obvious, and most clinics have these in some way, form, or fashion. Typically, though, they don't go past about 20 pounds, but we need dumbbells and kettlebells. There are certain exercises that lend themselves a little bit better to dumbbells and kettlebells. There are certain exercises that sometimes are less psychologically intimidating to people or take less coordination to perform with a dumbbell or kettlebell. Take a kettlebell deadlift compared to a barbell deadlift. It's a little easier to teach somebody how to kettlebell deadlift than barbell deadlift. So it makes a great introduction to the deadlift for some people. Do that for a few weeks. Once they get to where they're lifting that 70-pound kettlebell, whether it's from fear or technique, whatever was preventing you from starting with the barbell, now we drop down to a 45-pound barbell. Maybe we slap some 10-pound bumpers on the side. Now we start working up in the barbell. But sometimes the kettlebell dumbbell can be a better option. But make sure you're not using those little 5 and 8-pound neoprene dumbbells. Like, go ahead and get some that are going to be a little bit more stocky than that are going to go through a much wider range of weights than that. If you want to save money, a little tip for this is to buy in 10. So buy your dumbbells in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And there are a couple different companies that now make like magnetic change plates. So you can take your dumbbells and you can cut down the number of dumbbells you have to buy in half, and you use these little 2.5-pound magnetic plates to bump your dumbbell from, say, 40 to 45 without having to buy an entire another set. That will save you both space in the clinic as well as save you some dollars. After you've got those three are the basics: your barbell, your squat rack, your dumbbell, kettlebells. After you got that, here are kind of where you get into the nuances of things that will really help put icing on the cake of loading people. And I think the next thing that I would go with, if I was starting a clinic from scratch, is going to be a bunch of resistance bands. So that's going to be not your TheraBands, not your light little resistance bands, not those little resistance band tubes that everybody has in their closet. All your patients have those, but they've not used them in the last 20 years. I'm talking pull-up resistance bands. What you see right behind me here, these long, like 4-foot loops, you can buy them from Rogue, you can buy them from basically any equipment manufacturer out there. They go from fairly thin to pretty doggone thick, to like 2 inches thick, depending on the amount of resistance you need. But these are absolutely killer in the clinic for a number of different reasons. First of all, so often when I'm doing manual therapy, or at ICE, when we do manual therapy, we use that to rule in and out certain things. We use that as part of our trial treatment to identify what somebody's responding to. Well, when you find a mobilization that somebody responds to really well, what's the best thing you can give them to do at home? Something that really replicates that exact same thing you did. So if your person with hip impingement responded really well to an inferior mobilization of their hip joint, what do you want to give them in their HEP? Let's figure out a way to give them an inferior mobilization of their hip joint. So get a resistance band like that, have those in stock so you can loan them out to your patients, you can sell them to your patients, you can show them how to use it, and you get them doing self-joint mobilizations on themselves. From a strength perspective, there's also a ton of different exercises you can use when you have these types of resistance bands. So take somebody with knee pain. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Spanish squat. So it's a squat variation, big band behind your knees. You really sit back. You don't let the knee travel forward. At ICE, we are not scared of the knee traveling forward, but we do understand that at certain times in people's irritability, their knees going over their toes might bother their symptoms a little bit. But we can get a great loading on the tendons, great loading on the quads by doing Spanish squats in a position that doesn't load the joint very much. So you want to have a resistance band to do something like a Spanish squat. I also use resistance bands all of the time when I'm trying to emphasize certain muscle groups with patients. So let's take like a step up as an example here. We can place a resistance band pulling the body in different directions to create a desired movement effect. So we can put that band behind the knee where it's pulling forward, and it is now trying to pull the knee into knee flexion as we do a step up, step down. And now as that person stands up, their knee extension is being resisted by the band. So we use that band to further emphasize loading the quads through the full range of motion. Or instead of it pulling forward, we can have that band pulling medially. So it's trying to pull that knee into knee valgus. And we think that knee valgus is a symptom generator for that person's pain. And we've noticed that when they drive their knee out, they have a little less pain. Or maybe we just want to strengthen their lateral hip musculature. We put that band pulling the knee in. We have them really emphasize driving their knee into that band while they do a lateral step up. And now we further emphasize loading up those lateral hips, lateral glutes a little bit more when we use a band. So you definitely want to have bands on stock. At Onward Charlotte clinic that I own with Jordan Berry, we keep a lot of those in stock, and we just sell them at cost to our patients because we use them so frequently, and they do just such a good job. When you know how to use those from an exercise perspective, they're really good to get people loading the exact muscles you want without over irritating their symptoms so frequently. So it's almost a must for us. Next up on my list is going to be a slant board. So if you're watching me on Instagram, you can see my slant board right here. If you're on YouTube, it's a little bit lower. That is from VersaLift. So VersaLift is one of my favorite companies out there in terms of equipment for the fitness athletes. They started selling these little shoe inserts that are great to give you a little heel lift during your CrossFit workout, but they've come out with a number of different products lately. Their slant board is my favorite slant board that I've ever used. There are a lot of different companies that sell slant boards. What I like about theirs is it's actually stackable. So it can be a 15-degree angle, or you can stack two of them up and have a 30-degree angle, or you can flip them around and now it has a flat top and you have a little small step-up platform. And so it only takes up a little bit of space. It's about 1 foot by 1 foot, really well put together, grippy tape on it, but you can really use any slant board. I just think this is the best one there is. I like slant boards because not only can you do like calf exercises and calf stretching on slant boards, but for so many different exercises where we're trying to load up the quads, getting on a slant board can be a huge advantage because it really lets people keep an upright torso, lets them drive their knees forward more. It lets us load the quads up really good, or it lets us bypass some ankle mobility limitations. Like if somebody's got super stiff ankles and we want them squatting a little bit deeper, we can put their heels up on change plates, or we can put them up on a slant board, kind of facing down, and that will help them get into better positioning at times. So the slant board would be pretty high up on my priority list as well. The next few pieces of equipment are all things that I think are really important to have, but like get those first. Those are, you got your basics of the barbell, kettlebell, dumbbell, squat rack. Then you got your bands and slant board. Now here's like the cherries on top of the icing. These are the things that I think are really, really good to have, but get that stuff first for sure. So up next for me would be either a reverse hyperextension machine or a glute ham developer. I'd say in my personal fitness life, I use the glute ham developer more, but in the clinic, I use the reverse hyper a lot more. And so that would be the route that I would go first. So for those of you not familiar, a reverse hyper, think of it as a table that's really high off the ground. And you would lay across this padded table. So your torso's on the table and your legs are then hanging down and your feet go in this little strap, so that then you can extend your legs up. So you go from a little bit of lumbar flexion to lumbar extension, from hip flexion to hip extension. It is a great exercise for loading the entire posterior chain up. So we talked earlier about the barbell, mentioned a couple studies that look at like loaded barbell deadlifts. So I don't think there's any exercise out there that is better for creating overall body strength as well as mental resiliency in people that have low back pain or a history of low back pain. But one thing that we really believe here at ICE is that a principle of rehabilitation, and I talked about this a few weeks ago when I did a podcast called Don't Be a Glass Back, but a principle of rehabilitation in any area of the body is when something is injured, we strengthen the tissues in those areas. So when somebody has shoulder pain, whether it's a rotator cuff or labrum, what do? We strengthen their shoulders. We strengthen the rotator cuff. When somebody has Achilles tendinopathy, we load up the calf complex. When somebody has patellofemoral pain, we load up their quads and their glutes, and we make those tissues around that injured area stronger. When somebody has back pain, what should we do? Well, we should probably follow what works everywhere else in the body. And what the research is starting to point to more and more is that we want to strengthen the posterior chain and we want to strengthen the back. And there is no better exercise out there for isolating lower back strength than the reverse hyperextension. So I would go there probably above the glute ham developer, but I'd love to see every physical therapy clinic in the world have one of those two pieces of equipment if they already have all of those other things. Next up on my list, and this one might actually go above the reverse hyper, would be a piece of cardio equipment. This is not going to be, just your new step that you have somebody sit on and chill for 5 minutes to warm up to, be able to build one more unit. Although Dustin Jones did a great podcast a few days ago on bringing the new step back into building fitness. So go check that out if you work with older adults or you have new steps in your clinic. But I'm thinking more of a cardio equipment from two perspectives. Number one, for that person that needs that dose of fitness. So let's say somebody's coming in with shoulder pain, but they are completely inactive in their life. They're not getting any exercise. So we're going to do something like a rehab EMOM, every minute on the minute, where they're doing a shoulder exercise minute 1, minute 2, they do another shoulder exercise. Minute 3, they jump on our assault bike and they get their heart rate pumping for a minute or two. We use that as an entry to getting a little bit of dose of fitness in their life. Where I tend to use it a little bit more as somebody that treats primarily only active individuals, people already getting their dose of fitness in on a daily basis. We have a Rogue Echo bike at our clinic, and Rogue Echo bike would be my biggest suggested piece of cardio equipment for physical therapists. But the Rogue Echo bike is nice because it's big, it's strong, you're not going to break it, but it's also super quiet. So somebody can go really hard on that thing, but it's not disruptive to the entire clinic because it's actually a relatively quiet machine. But I use it so much for like our hot radiculopathies that just need to get blood and fluid pumping through their body. So think when somebody comes in with like a cervical radic or lumbar radic, like what do we do for that person that's highly irritable? We might needle them, we might manipulate, we might mobilize, we might do repeated motions. All of those things are working through a number of different mechanisms, but one of those mechanisms is that it pumps fluid in that area. And fluid exchange can often help with pain levels. But what's the biggest way that we can move fluids in the body? It's to get our heart rate jacked up. So let's get on that Echo bike and let's do some intervals for that hot radiculopathy. Let's go 10 seconds hard, 20 seconds light, 10 seconds hard, 20 seconds light. Spike that heart rate up, let it come down, that can do a great effect on knocking somebody's pain level down and getting them feeling quite a bit better. So get a piece of cardio equipment. And then the final thing that I'd get, and this I would have everything else before I went to this, even though it is probably one of the cheaper options out there, would be some form of suspension trainer or rings. So suspension trainers are very small. They don't take up much space. You can hang them off your pull-up bar. You can set an anchor on the wall or on the ceiling. They don't cost very much money. You can find different versions. Like TRX is going to run a little over $100, but you can find Amazon knockoff for $50 or less. Really versatile with the amount of different exercises you can do with it. Or if you want to treat the fitness athlete population, instead of getting suspension trainers like a TRX, I'd probably go with a set of gymnastics rings, because it's what they're going to be doing with a number of different movements inside of their sport. Gymnastics rings also relatively cheap. You can probably pick up a set of those on Amazon or Rogue or Rep Fitness or somewhere like that for less than $50. So that's my equipment list of what I would really want to have if I was starting a physical therapy clinic from scratch, and I wanted to make sure that I had the necessary strength equipment to load people up. I mentioned a couple things earlier. PTOnice.com, click the blog, and Jeff just wrote an article on why the barbell is the most essential piece of equipment in physical therapy clinics. But if you're also on PTOnice.com and you click the resources tab, we have a number of different free resources on that tab. One of which is a little ebook that we put together in the fitness athlete division on essential pieces of strength and conditioning equipment for the physical therapy clinic that talks about some of the stuff we talked about today, gives a couple other options, as well as suggested exercises for those pieces of equipment that might give you some new, refreshed ideas of how to load your patients up in the clinic. But you can download that for free, and that will also put you on our Hump Day Hustling email list, which if you are not on our Hump Day Hustling email list, you're missing out. Every week, the 5 best pieces of resources out there for orthopedic physical therapists is sent out to you for free. It's going to keep you on top of modern research. Go sign up for that. You're missing out on a wonderful resource. But check out those resources at ptonice.com. Thank you for joining today, and we will see you next time. Have a great Friday and a great weekend.